So my name is Javed Khan. I'm the Chief Executive of Barnardo's, and Barnardo's is the UK's oldest and largest children's charity. My career journey is quite simple in many ways, and I'm in my 34th year of what I call public service now. I began as a maths teacher, teaching in Birmingham, in schools and in colleges, and worked my way up the education sector through to assistant principal of a large further education college. Then into Birmingham City Council was my first big step into senior leadership. I became assistant director of education, then director of education in Harrow, and then I jumped into the civil service for a couple of years as an executive director. And then in 2010, I became chief executive of Victim Support, a very large voluntary sector organisation working across England and Wales. And in 2014, became chief executive of Barnardo's, where I am now. And this was a completely irresistible offer, because it brought me back to children and young people, brought me into the largest platform for supporting vulnerable children and young people in the UK. And ever since, it's been a huge privilege. Well, I've had many challenges, as anybody in a senior leadership position will tell you, operating in the UK and given the kind of roles that I've done, and being a British Pakistani also makes it doubly difficult in many ways. But I think the biggest professional challenge I've faced is how to translate what I call is a deep understanding of the challenges of children and young people in this country, particularly the most vulnerable communities, at a grassroots level in the way that I've worked, through to somewhere like Barnardo's, where the scale is enormous. And so the challenge of how do you scale up your understanding of what needs to be done to a very high scale, where it begins not just to transform the lives of hundreds of thousands of people, which is what we do every year in Barnardo's, but also influences the thinkers in society. And I mean by that the politicians, the influencing the legislation and the future government policies in terms of what's right to do. And so that's been quite a balancing act for me, to keep my finger on the pulse of what really works in society, understand it, scale up the thinking, and take the evidence to the policymakers to try and change society for the greater good. And I've learned a lot over the years about how to do that. I've got it wrong a number of times as well, and part of learning is getting things wrong. But I'm grateful to the Almighty that I've been given some great opportunities to really make an enormous difference. But that's probably been the greatest challenge. So I've had many highlights, such a privileged person, I believe, for which I'm very, very grateful to the Almighty and the prayers of my parents and so on. But beginning life in very humble background. So I grew up in Spark Brook in the city of Birmingham, which is a very rundown part of Birmingham, always was and still is. My parents never had the magic wand of an education, so they couldn't read or write in any language, never went to school in any country. And so we had very simple kind of childhood, but great love and affection alongside a hard work ethic. And that stayed with me throughout my career now, so it's kept me grounded, and I'd like to think that that's taught me a great deal about who I am and the difference I can make, and how I can make the best opportunity, the maximum achievement out of any opportunity that I get. And so it keeps me focused, but also reminds me about what's really important in life. The basic things in life are really important. Care and attention for those that you love, showing affection for those that need it, showing compassion for those that need your support. And that very much embodies the work that I do now at Barnardo's, where we support over 300,000 children and young people every single year. And I have 22,000 volunteers to help me do that, 8,500 paid staff help me do that. So it's large scale and making a great difference, for which I'm extremely humbled. Well, as I said, my humble background actually might suggest to you that I shouldn't have achieved very much in my life. In fact, I remember when I became a chief executive for the first time, a national journalist was interviewing me, and when he asked me about my life story and told him, my family background and origins and so on, and he said it's quite surprising. He said, "You were clearly born to be a welfare statistic. What went wrong for you. And I've often thought back at that and tried to work out the answer. What was it that has given me these privileged opportunities and this great opportunity to really make a mark, yet from very simple backgrounds. And as you will know, and the listeners to this podcast will know, that being a British Pakistani in a senior leadership position in 2019 is not an easy task. So many of the challenges that you face and much of the advantages or privileges you might look for are actually stacked against you rather than for you. And so you've got to be doubly good at what you do. And so when I think about that journey over 34 years and I think about my humble background, actually there is nothing I would change. Because my upbringing, in inner city Birmingham in Sparkbrook, with very few material possessions, very little support, actually taught me a great deal about who I am today. It defines me, rather than as being a problem for me. And so I wouldn't change any of that. If you look back at my childhood, I went to state schools. I sat the 11 plus at age 11 because everybody in our class did, and abysmally failed it, and we all failed it. But there was no stigma attached to it. I went to the local comprehensive. And I struggled through my education and made it through to university with the help of some amazing teachers. Now, that taught me a great deal about the plight of vulnerable children today, the people that I stand to support at Barnardo's. And that understanding, I think, connects me with the people that I'm here to support. And I think, the most vulnerable people need the most support. It's a cliche, but it's absolutely true. And in these difficult times that we're living through, whether it's political or environmental changes, financial challenges that people face, at times of great difficulty, it's the most vulnerable who suffer the most. Well, I often talk about the plight of vulnerable children and young people in Britain, and people are quite surprised. Firstly, that there are so many people who are vulnerable in the sixth most powerful economy in the world. In this country now, as I speak, over 4.5 million children and young people are in poverty. And before people think that, well, that's because their parents aren't working and are lazy and so on, the majority of those 4.5 million, their families are in work. So they're underemployed, underpaid, if you like. These are the working poor that we're talking about, and those numbers are increasing. And if we're not careful, particularly if the politics of the day makes the wrong decisions at this difficult time, more and more children are going to go into poverty. If you think about inflation rising, job prospects being dubious, commodity prices increasing by 9% is the latest projection, basic needs that people have, people are going to be struggling. And then the people that they rely on to support them will be the state. And if the state hasn't got the money, or the money is being spent elsewhere, local government doesn't get the support that it needs to build the services that vulnerable people need, who are they going to turn to? They may turn to charities. Charities rely on financial donations. And if people aren't feeling secure about themselves or their job prospects, they're not going to donate. So what you get is a perfect storm coming together where the most vulnerable become even more vulnerable, and there are not the support services in place to help them. And those are the challenges that children and young people face today. Add to it the arrival of social media in ways that we could not have imagined only a few years ago. Every parent buys their child a smartphone at age 6 or 7, and most parents don't have a clue about how to control the access to what that smartphone now makes available. So we at Barnardo's are seeing children who are being groomed online, sexually exploited, abused, bullied. All kinds of mental health issues are connected to that. We're seeing children taking smartphones into their bedrooms, uncontrolled. And that is essentially the same as allowing a film crew into your child's bedroom and do what they may to extract images and to send them in images. We have children who are suffering mental health and behavioral problems because they're being exposed to the most vulgar pornographic material on their smartphones and on the internet generally. We have website platforms that are being used by abusers and pedophiles to reach children. This is modern day Britain. In fact, it's a worldwide phenomenon. It's not just Britain. These are the challenges that children and young people are facing. 1 in 8 children in school at the moment has a mental health issue. 1 in 4 young girls at the age of 14 are suffering social anxiety or depression. These are big, big challenges that we as a society need to tackle. And Barnardo's is doing its bit, but actually we need the government to wake up. We need the IT technology companies to recognize their responsibility. We need parents to wake up to the reality of what is going on in their homes. They're trying their best, but they don't know what to do about it. So the whole of society has got to wake up to this. And so I'm not painting a particularly gloomy picture. I'm speaking about the facts. This is the society that we live in the sixth largest economy in the world. And my fear is it's going to get worse. Well, my personal plans, I'm a very spiritual kind of person, so I believe in the power of the Almighty. I've been given this opportunity that I'm in today, not because of anything that I've done, but, it's a test for me to see how well I can do it. And so my philosophy in life, always throughout my working life, has been seize the opportunity that you've got today, put in 110% effort, and don't worry about tomorrow, because it's not in your control. Anyway, you can only look after today. So I'm not the kind of person who has a career plan for what I'm going to be doing tomorrow. But I'm absolutely focused on what I'm doing today. And I have great ambitions for Barnardo's, where I work. We are already the largest children's charity. Our income is going up every year. We're supporting more and more children every single year. And I hope that is going to continue, because the needs and demands are outstripping the supply for the most vulnerable people. So that's what I stand for. That's what I'm absolutely focused on. We're doing some really, really interesting work at Barnardo's at the moment about testing out, what really works with vulnerable children. So we're doing lots of research and lots of analysis. We're working with outside partners. We're working with great universities who are helping us do that research as well. We are trying to diversify our reach and get more into more communities that we haven't been able to touch that need our services. We're trying to diversify our donor base. We're taking a message out to the great British Asian community, and the Pakistanis are right at the heart of that as well, to say yes, first, second generation of our parents and ourselves as well have a connection to our country of origin. And so, we're supporting those projects over there as well. But let's not forget about the plight of our children in this country on our doorstep that also need support. And so I want to diversify the message of Barnardo's to the British Asian community and say, have a look at Barnardo's, see the work that we do. You can touch and feel the difference that we make. Come and join us on this magical journey. All I can encourage people to do is aim really, really high. I see so many people from the British Asian, British Pakistani community who kind of accept what they're doing and think that it's always going to be like that and aren't very ambitious. So my message to them, and the example from my own career, is I've always been highly ambitious, not worried about it, but always wanted to do the very best. And every opportunity I've got has been a privilege, and that's how I've approached it. So I would hope that other people out there maybe watching this also think ambitiously, because if a relatively simple person like me with my background can sit at the helm of the largest children's charity in the UK and rub shoulders with senior politicians and royalty and all kinds of other very influential people, if I can achieve that from my background, then today's children, who have many, many more gifts than I was given in life, should be able to really reach the very highest level in a whole range of professions. I hope more people will come into the voluntary sector as well. Not everybody needs to be a lawyer or an engineer or a pilot. We need people who are in the public sector as well and who are in the voluntary sector. All sectors of life need contributions from the British Pakistani community. We need to represent the communities that these agencies serve. We need to diversify the workforce. And I believe that there's a business case because we have a great deal to offer. We understand how this particular community ticks, what it worries about, what the nuances are within the communities. And we need to take that knowledge into the institutions so that they can respond more effectively and appropriately. So I really hope people watching this will think about Barnardo's as a good home for their donations, but also for their support. They can volunteer, they can apply for jobs, and they can give us their prayers as well, because we need those too. But the best way to get in touch is through our website, www.barnardos.org.uk. And if you want to get in touch with me, I'm very easy to find because there aren't many people that do what I do.